Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about FCP Insight. We're going to be sharing some background on the company and then looking at the actual product. Appreciate you taking time with us. And those of you who are watching this afterwards, look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm Erick, CEO and the founders of FCP Insight. And I've got our CTO marketing team with us on the call today. We'd all be happy to engage with you and hope you make it a great day. With that, we're going to talk about the features of FCP Insight. But before we do, let's take a quick and give you a little bit of background on who and what we are. A little bit of housekeeping. Please do mute your speakers or your microphone if you're not speaking. We will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of it. If you do have a question as we're moving through the presentation, please put it into the chat and we'll make sure to come back to it. And please know that we are recording this both, just to study how we're doing our presentations and for future marketing. So just be aware of that. And thank you very much for your acceptance of that. By way of background, myself, Kevin Delargy, co-founders of the company. Kevin has more than 20 years of experience developing robust software platforms that are really tailored to the needs of the user, not necessarily what a programmer wants to write, but more working on making sure that it's a solution that's intuitive and that's effective for the people who have to use the platform on any given period. And Kevin's done a wonderful job. The product has been developed in a sibling company over a 20-year window. We're in the process of really taking it to market now. We've got some customer adoption and we're excited about that. The problem that we're solving is the construction industry, by and large, even today, remains one of the least automated industries in the world. There's several hundreds of thousands of specialty contractors. Many of them are key target market electrical contractors, several hundred thousand of those. And, there's estimated $77 billion in lost revenue or profit due to the lack of automation. So many contractors, as we speak with them today, they have a disparate tech stack or they don't have a tech stack. In some instances, they're still using manila envelopes, which is just fascinating, and or spreadsheets to manage scopes of work. And the challenge there is that's great if you're a small single person doing work, you can keep that on your laptop. But as an organization starts to grow, the complexity of communication becomes a challenge. And that's where having a central repository of key information that brings all of those disparate systems together under one platform makes a huge difference. The addressable market's about 1.7 billion. As a SaaS model company, we're looking for a small percentage of that to make this a very robust and profitable business. We've got over 2 decades of using the system inside of EBSCO Solutions. Over 8,000 projects have run through that, several thousand service calls as well. It's a feature-rich product that's SaaS model, cloud-based on Amazon Web Services platform. It's fully integrated with QuickBooks Contractor, and we're wrapping up the QuickBooks Online here in the next couple of months for everybody that uses QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks being the most commonly used accounting package inside of small to mid-size contractors in the specialty contracting market. And the nice thing about that is that oftentimes the biggest impediment to somebody moving forward with a system of this nature, an ERP, is that the accounting department doesn't want to give up whatever the accounting system currently is. And so we've adapted to integrating with QuickBooks. With that, we're going to jump into actually looking at the product. And I am going to take over sharing my screen here momentarily. We're going to go right there. You should be able to see my screen now. Yeah, there we go. Wonderful. Okay, with that, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to pull up the configuration page. And one of the things I want to talk about is the flexibility of the system. We realized a couple of years ago as we started to look at how do we bring customers into this platform, that while the platform had been built over a 20-year period and was exceptional for the company it was built for, the platform needed to be adaptable and flexible to meet the needs of other contractors whose processes may not be identical to the system that the company that initially was using the system. So one of the things that we've done, and I'm going to turn on the label editing here. One of the things that we've done that you can see is, and I'm going to hit refresh really quick. You can see that we can add a component to this page. We can remove a component from this page, and we can configure a component on this page. The other thing that we can do is we can come in and configure naming nomenclature. So if I wanted to make this, instead of job name, project name, I can do that. And it will make that change for all of the users on this instance of the system. Now, I'm going to change that back because this is an actual live system. So we're going to make that change back to job. And there we go. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here to label editor and turn this off so that I don't make any inadvertent changes to the live system. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to create those data points that are most commonly used, but they're not used by everybody. And so it allows us to literally remove those from pages so that we can drill down to what do you as a customer really need to be able to utilize the system, and how do we minimize the amount of activity or input that an individual has to have for a sheet or a page to be relevant to them. The next thing I want to look at is the ease of estimating. And we've done some things here that every time we show this off to a contractor, that gets a little bit of a wow factor, which makes me excited. We have a number of different tabs that break down what it takes for a contractor to build out a project or a proposal for a job. The first tab, and I'm actually just running through them. We've got the general tab. We have an equipment summary tab, and then this particular instance uses what's called equipment groups, but you could just put equipment in or materials in on the equipment summary page. And then we have a labor tab that you can break down the labor units by one to many phases. And that labor tab is a huge benefit, and I'll show you some of that here in just a moment as to why that speeds up the proposal process. We have subcontracting so that you can add contractors pricing to your proposal and mark it up appropriately. We have other, which is calculators for things like travel, airfare, per diem, lift rental, so that you can add the cost of it, number of days, number of technicians, parking, things of that nature. Then we have the pricing tab, which gives a summation of everything and allows you to make some adjustments for things like margin adjustment. We have terms and conditions, and one of the benefits there is that we've created it in such a way that you can put a term or condition, inclusion, exclusion, limitation terms at the master level of the system behind the wall, so to speak, behind the curtain, so that the average user isn't going to make adjustments to those. You can then populate notes quickly, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And then last, we have the ability to create a document tree that is a corporate standard document tree for each instance of this system, so that individual users can identify what's important to them in a document tree and create consistency from one project to the next. Just looking at the left-hand side, to run down this particular instance, and again, this also is flexible. We have users who now have a couple of extra tabs on them. This particular instance will migrate here before too long so that financial reporting and those finance reports are broken out separately. So we can adjust those actual individual tabs. But for now, let's look at the sales process. On the general tab, you have the ability to put together a proposal. What is it based on? What is the desired outcome? You can track marketing and lead information, and then you can also track what changes have been made on a proposal and by who, so that you can see the progression of a proposal's development. One of the things here that is highly beneficial is I could, and this is one of those wow factor items, I could copy this proposal for this project, which means it would give me a -2. So if I had a version where somebody wanted 10 of something, but they wanted an alternate proposal that was for 20 of something, I could literally copy this proposal and just do a -2 and send them both versions of that to choose from. I could also copy this proposal for a new proposal. An example of that, let's say we're doing Nordstrom rack renovations, and we did Factoria in Washington, and now we're going to do the Oregon store. The specifications may be identical, and so the notes are identical. The equipment list may be identical. I literally can copy that proposal for a new project and add a new facility to it. So now I went from Factoria to the Wilsonville venue. Next, you can copy this proposal for a new project altogether, which is a benefit. Excuse me, that actually is the Nordstrom rack scenario. I can copy this. Next one is bid this proposal to another customer. So in that scenario, I literally could add it would bid this proposal number, because all I'm going to do is add another user. And then actually, we'll go ahead and do that in this scenario just as I'm going to type in Sco as the customer, and we can hit save. And a benefit there is that I can now select from the contacts at Absco. I'll use myself as the individual that we're bidding this to. Now, the interesting thing here is I don't want this, I'm only going to have this item in my sales funnel one time. I don't want to inflate my sales funnel artificially. And so I can delete that from sales reports so that my sales funnel remains accurate. The last one that I skipped over earlier is copy from this proposal. This gives me the ability to enter an estimate number that I want to take information from this proposal, either the equipment list, special pricing, or terms and conditions. And in that instance, I can merge this information onto another sheet, or I can overwrite the existing sheet, which is a huge benefit in speeding up the estimating process. I said earlier that we had some things that we've done with labor that are beneficial. One of the things, well, actually, let's look at equipment groups just briefly. I'm going to have to find a proposal that has equipment groups. Give me a moment, we'll come back to that. Actually, we're going to switch up proposals altogether. I'm going to come down here and we're going to find a different proposal to look at. Give me one moment. I can tell we're tying up some bandwidth with broadcasting on Zoom.
Eric, a question while we're waiting. When you were showing creating another bid in that proposal, what situations would you want to create the same proposal for a different company?
For a different company. Yeah, so again, we might have a scenario where they wanted to present two different alternatives, right? One, like I said, for somebody like Absco Solutions, who's a life safety and security integrator, they might want to have a bid that had a video recorder that was 48 terabytes, and then another bid with the exact same set of cameras where the NVR was larger and more expensive, 64 terabytes, and they're trying to figure out how can I get the most bang for my buck, right? And how do I use my resources and my budget most wisely? And so that would be a scenario where literally all you're doing is it's all the same camera list, but you're swapping out one piece of equipment for another in that scenario and bidding it to the same organization. Let me see if I do have equipment groups here. That's great. So the benefit of equipment groups is you can list out, by floor, by location, by venue, by a scope of work. In some instances for Absco Solutions doing what they do with the, here it says access doors, but I have seen this company do proposals where it literally lists out each door and exactly what scope of work is going at each door. So it creates a much more robust scope of work and defines it more clearly for operations. One of the benefits here is you've got labor broken out by work phase. So for an electrical contractor, oftentimes pre-wire or boxes and wire or an item. And then you've got trimming of equipment related to that item. And then you might have head-end termination, possibly programming and inspection, and then design work. If I click that button, the nice thing is, let's say in this instance, one customer wanted this version of this proposal turnkey, and one customer wanted to provide a significant portion of that labor themselves. We can very quickly do both versions of that proposal, which is a huge benefit for anybody who bids a lot of work. We can add other, and we can show different items, line items, and then finally we get to the pricing tab. And then another big item, like I said, you can at the head end enter your terms and conditions. And the nice thing about that is it gives you the opportunity to edit it for grammar and to confirm that it would be legally accurate if it became an issue that needed to be presented in a contract dispute. Hugely beneficial, as opposed to salespeople just creating out of wholesale cloth limits and terms. And then last, that file tree. Really interesting thing here. We love these little numbers at the end of it because, as best efforts, contractors want to have their team members put things into the same folder every time. But I was talking with a multi-billion-dollar general contractor here a while ago, and this one item is something that they were fascinated by because they have a file tree. It's a standard file tree. People put things in different places because they're not following the standardized process, and they don't have a number after it. And so there have been times where they've had to go through several files to try and find that one important document. Here we know that, we've got a total of 6 items, which is actually the cumulative underneath this, 3 of which are sitting in bid documents. And we can look at, 2 of those 3 are sitting here, which means one's sitting in the head end. So it's a quick reference point, highly functional. With that, we want to look at the sales funnel management. Sales has a number of reports that they can run. We have we have a review process. Not all of our customers want a review process. And so the nice thing is we can literally just remove that from the system without additional programming. It's literally me, a layman, to some extent, perhaps a Luddite, going in and just removing that from the system. It's pretty easy to do. With that, I am going to go into expected to close. And if we pull this up, take just a second because it's bringing in a lot of data. We look at March, and I'm going to go to 70% likely to close. The nice thing is again, as you manage the sales funnel, what we really want to know is what's 70%, what's 80% likely to close. This $9 million will obviously drop by a significant amount at 80% likely, but $2 million is not too bad at 80% likely. Actually, I would call that good for a business the size of Absco. And at 70%, I think it's probably, 3.1 million. So you can see that delta of 10% is more than $1 million in opportunity that salespeople need to advance. And the nice thing is a client can, break this down by office location. They can go in and look at individual salespeople. They can define what each of those percentages means. And so huge benefit to sales managers managing more than one person. But even if it's just me managing my own work, the benefit there is that, let's say, Morgan Campbell wants to look at what it is that he needs to follow up on at 70% likely, and we can quickly find that information. Huge benefit to an individual managing their individual scope of work. The next item is once a project moves from the expected to award to actually awarded or dead. If a project goes dead, you can identify why it went dead in the process of marking it no longer active. Did we lose that due to pricing, relationship, wrong product? And so it allows you to start evaluating more thoroughly where and why are we losing opportunity. And when it goes awarded, it becomes a project. And if I'm going to go into the installation report here, and I'm going to pull up an install phase report. A nice thing here is you can pull up at various points in a job, or we can pull up multiple points in a job. Current status, I'm going to choose by office. And in this instance, I only want to look at Spokane. Let's say I was the manager of the Spokane office. I can pull up those items that I am responsible for. This will take just a moment as it's pulling a ton of data. It pulls in some real information regarding hours used and how much percent complete. Now here we have an instance where it's a small job. We've used an estimated 27% of the hours that were estimated, and we don't show any percentage complete. That particular job might be substantially complete, but the project manager on that job simply hasn't entered percent complete yet. Nice thing is it flags it as red as needing to be done and allows you to look at it. Let's say it was only 10% complete, still going to flag it as red. We know that somebody has entered a percent complete. We might want to look at, is there a situation that we need to pursue a change order related to this? And so it gives you real-time hours, and you can look at real-time. We can also address prevailing wage. We can look at billings to date. What is the total project worth? What are we invoiced in total? What is the status of the invoice? If the invoice were paid, it would show this as being paid. So as a project manager, I can drill into a job very quickly and manage my scope of work and where my profitability is, what I expect profitability to be at the end of the job. We also have real-time WIP report, work in progress. Interesting thing, it takes about 20 seconds to actually pull a WIP report on the system. Can take a little longer, depending on how recently the report was run. But I've talked to contractors and CPAs who say that a WIP report for their companies takes days, not seconds, 4 days to figure out what the work in progress report looks like for monthly adjustments, a month end for the P&L. It's a big deal there. Again, in this scenario, we have a number of different areas that you can look at. The general tab is just general information about the project. You can add contact information. You can add inquiries. There's a whole list of things that we can do. And again, we can eliminate any and all of this from somebody else's user screen. They have a different need for it than this company does. Packing lists, transmittals, time cards are all things that, time card codes. If you had a situation where you had a contract that might have some conflict, but you want to be able to track something separate from the base project, where every time an incident happens, you can create a different time code for it, which is highly beneficial when going back for dispute resolution. Again, the sales tab, you can add change orders on the project, design, permitting, takeoffs. Oftentimes, contractors, when they bid a job initially, the design gets done and the design is slightly different than the bid. I don't think anybody's paid for a perfect estimate. As a matter of fact, most people don't pay for estimates. So estimates oftentimes will have some volume of contingency in them to accommodate the things that got missed. And then the team operations or design, they go in and catch those things. And as they do, what that equates to is the takeoffs may be different. And actually, you can see that in this instance, quantity of one bid, but not using that particular item, substituting a different item for it. That might be something like the product that was going to be used was discontinued. We have the ability to track submittals and O&Ms, and you can actually add PDFs in the system to quickly produce documentation related to a project. This integrates again with QuickBooks, so it pulls information in regarding purchasing and tracking of shipping. You can track your individual change orders if we had any. We can look at the percent complete. Operations can do scheduling and track team members. We can create schedule of values. Contractors who do large scopes of work oftentimes that are build in progress billing have to do a schedule of values associated with the job in order to send a bill. And that would be, this is what we've delivered to date to the site, and this is what has been completed so that we can get paid. And then again, the labor hours, the costing, all things that a project manager and higher level management might want to see. The other thing on the labor hours is, and we've seen projects that have 20 people on them listed. If I wanted to know why was this individual on that job for 4.75 hours on a given day, I can drill in and see what they did during that time frame, and I can see the actual time card. So time card management and time management is a huge benefit. One of the benefits around that is, so here we are looking at the actual time card. One of the benefits around that is I can see if people are using their time wisely inside the system. The time card entry is on either an iPhone or an Android. They literally can go in a field operations person, an electrician, a low voltage electrician, a design person can go in and literally enter the project number. It will automatically pull it up or give you a list of selections as you start typing, which much of this system does. As you start typing in a customer name, it will actually start to autofill so that you can find the information rapidly. And it allows us to have technical workforce enter their time on what most people have as a standard phone, either an iPhone or an Android. And again, I'm going to back out of this so that we can get back to the project. And then the last item is having that document repository. So as a job moves forward, now in this instance, we have 19 items in total under here, and you can see that we have a handful in other folders. A lot of them went in at the head end folder. So again, this may be ease of use for an individual, but again, the company may want some of these spread out. The nice thing is you can actually move them to a different folder after the fact. And I can go in and create a new folder. If I've got something special related to a project that's off the norm of the standard folder set that the organization wants to utilize as their standard, this particular project may need a special folder. I can go in and create a new folder under an existing folder to do that. And I could do that at the head end level as well. So with that, let's take a brief look at service. And actually, before we do that, I'm going to go into the org search and search for a client. Let's say Seattle Pacific University. And I do that because I know that if I could spell, we'd be in great shape. Seattle Pacific University has been a customer of Absco's for 30 plus years. And because of that, there's a very robust set of information in the system having to do with their facilities. This will take just a moment to propagate as it pulls in contacts, facilities, etc. So if you give me just a moment, that probably did it. It did. Long list of clients, long list of facilities. One of the benefits there is that if you go into an individual facility, we can look at inspection reporting, most recent service calls, who the technician was. And the benefit here is field staff can have access to much of this information. And that's one more thing we should talk about just briefly. The system has the ability to partition off who can see what. So if I want my project manager to be able to see the financial reporting on a job, the real job costing and the P&L related to an individual job, I can set it so that if they've been assigned to that project, they can see that information. but that we can also keep them from seeing that information on every tab or every project. And it allows us to really delineate read, write responsibilities for pretty much everything you've seen here, which is a huge benefit of an organization. The other thing is you can do that by role, and that's an important piece. If you have a project manager, the project manager role, whoever was assigned to that project can have that access, where no one else may have access to that except upline management. And so huge benefit to be able to do that by role, because that way you don't have to make individual assignments to individual projects. Again, very robust piece. We have the ability to do scheduling. You can do scheduling actually a couple of different ways. You can do scheduling by office and individual. You can do it to see staffing. You can do scheduling by calendar. And I know that there you go. I know that this organization is utilizing that for service and putting scheduling. The scheduling can send calendar invites. And so scheduling is a big piece of this, automating that process for an organization that does service work and giving the technician the ability to hit a link and go in and look at, what am I doing? I managed to pick something at SPU, which is fascinating in and of itself. This technician will be doing work at SPU, and here's the work that was done, here's the work that was slated, report time against it, and so we can see time card entries associated with this particular service call. And it allows for the automation of billing. Again, that integration with QuickBooks does wonders. With that, love to open it up to questions for a few minutes. We're going to try and wrap up by 9:30. Jen, do we have any questions today?
I have a question here. So, you've said that you use the platform in your business, Absco. What has the Business Control Center done to, move your company along and help with your success?
Yeah, great question. I think for Absco, in the low voltage alarm industry, it's fascinating. A salesperson is typically considered successful if they do between $1 and $2 million worth of sales. And arguably that is sufficiently successful. But, with Absco, we've seen salespeople do 4 or 5 million consistently a year without needing an executive assistant, without needing a team of people. And a lot of that has to do with just the speed of being able to estimate. Further, this is given, we want to give people the information that they need in a construction company without giving them access to the accounting system. I mean, the last thing we want is to have somebody in the accounting system that doesn't need to be there. And so for the organizations that we work with, one of the things that they really enjoy and that Absco has enjoyed is the ability to put this information at people's fingertips and without having to give them access to the accounting system and without having to give them access to every project that's, let people focus on what they need to focus on their area of operation and improve their area of operation. And so that's been a huge benefit. And, the automation of time cards in the field, being able to identify real time, how is a project doing, and identify, do we have issues that need to be addressed as it relates to potential change orders, I think is a huge benefit for organizations out of the gate. So I hope that answered the question. If there's a follow-up, love to hear it.
Follow-up let's see if I can read this. What was I'm gonna go to the next one here. I know you're raising capital now. What are the plans for the capital that you raise?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. The capital that we raised initially was putting all the appropriate infrastructure in place, all the brand development, messaging, bringing on a couple of clients, really dialing in the onboarding process, putting the video tutorials in place, a whole laundry list of just making sure that the company's prepared to start to scale. The funds that we're raising right now are really about, wrapping up a couple of pieces of development around, we want to do a free version of the estimating tool to get early adoption in an organization as it relates to estimating, because we believe that will ultimately lead to onboarding anybody who does that. And, continuing to fine tune, of course, the offering as a whole and continue to develop features. But the substantial portion of the raise is really slated for targeted marketing to people who are doing web search for estimating, electrical contracting, ERP, electrical contracting CRM or CRM in the construction industry. And so really the substantial chunk of this capital raise is really intended to go out and develop end users. The goal And again, I know that anytime I do one of these videos, just like a private placement memorandum, I have to put a bunch of disclaimers on here. Our intent is that is not a commitment that is what will happen, et cetera. But our goal really is to get to break even and then profitability on a SaaS model of revenue, be utilizing this round of funding. So
I got some clarity on the follow-up from the last. It was really about the access between QuickBooks and FCP, the integration, and kind of data entry.
Yeah, the nice thing is first of all, you can make it bidirectional, you can make it one directional. Things like updating, a client name. You may only want to do that in an accounting system because that's the official version, and we can make those match, and we can link individual customer number to a particular record so that as that information gets updated, it gets updated virtually real time. I mean, it's within a few minutes for sure, and oftentimes within a few seconds. Being able to export time cards directly out of the system, and then allowing an opportunity for the accounting department to make sure that everything was reported correctly before importing it for payroll is, I think, a huge benefit. It could be direct, but I wouldn't recommend the direct. I would recommend leaving it with an integration piece that the accounting department can go in and verify. Is this prevailing wage? Did they mark it as prevailing wage? Is it, did they hit overtime in a particular day based on the jurisdiction that they were working in? I don't know if everybody on the call understands that, but first of all, there are a lot of different prevailing wage scales. Second, a number of different jurisdictions, be it federal work, state work, local commercial sector, have different rules as it relates to overtime. In some instances, an 8-hour day, as soon as you go 1 minute over 8 hours, you're into overtime. In other instances, as long as you don't go over 40 hours in a week, you don't hit overtime. And even then, there are some things that may be deducted from what qualifies for overtime. So it's a fascinating process, and I don't envy the accounting team that has to deal with it. But it's a robust, can be totally by direct integration with QuickBooks that allows for the free flow of information. You can also determine who gets to accept what information. In some instances, the accounting department has to actually okay something coming into QuickBooks. So it's a good process. I hope I answered that question fully.
Yeah, I think the one other piece of that is how much time do you think that could potentially save a typical company?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I know that there are organizations that have dedicated people that, I find it fascinating. Again, our industry, God bless us. There are companies that do their estimate in a Excel spreadsheet. They award a project. They re-enter all that data into some form of project management. They re-enter all of that data into their accounting system. And, maybe the estimate took 3-4 hours to build because they had to really think about what they were doing. So maybe the data entry only takes an hour each time it gets moved. And then, take that a step further, being able to track the accuracy and continuity of that information. You now have 3 points of data that are not integrated with one another. And so maybe it got changed in the accounting system, but never got changed in the project management system. Or what might even be worse is maybe it got changed in the project management system. We had 5 more of these that we needed to do, but it never got updated in the accounting system. And suddenly we're looking at a project going, why are we upside down on the P&L when we think we're running a good project? And